I'm Lily and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a while, but I'm back with another podcast. This is my space to share my designs, my projects, yarn, things I've been working on, just whatever comes to mind, knitting related and otherwise. And it's been a little while. The start of the year was a bit up and down for me in terms of being very busy with other stuff and then trying to catch up with uni work, and when you're just finding yourself in that kind of cycle of constantly trying to catch up with things. There's definitely memes about that adulthood is a constant cycle of I'll have more time next week, I'll get on with it next week, and I got trapped in that cycle for a bit and finally have ticked off everything that needed to be done on my to-do list. So I'm feeling much better now and filming a podcast. It has taken me until the afternoon today because it is sunny in the UK for the first time this year. We're having an actual week of sun. So everyone and the dog is out mowing the garden. So I've just had to wait for next door to finish mowing the lawn before I can film. But here we are. We made it eventually. And I actually have quite a lot of new things to share. I said I was going to do more kind of different chat topic videos this year, which I definitely still do intend to do. However, today I've got so many different projects to share that I think that will be enough. And unintentionally I have a bit of a blue theme going on, just kind of looking at my table of things. Last year I did loads of pink, and this year apparently I am feeling blue. So on to the first project that I have finished lately, which I think in my last video I had only just cast on. I'd done a little bit, and it should have been a very quick project if I had had my normal amount of time to spend on knitting, but I didn't, so it took quite a while. But the project itself is speedy. My life just wasn't. So this is the My Time sweater, my latest design. I shall insert some clips here. I feel like I have to waft. It's the kind of sweater that you can't just put your arms down and leave it. You've got to show it off. Got to waft. This is the big detail here, the sleeves. So yeah, I will try to remember to film some cutaways to insert here. But yeah, this is the My Time sweater that I started in January, finished a few weeks ago, and it is just, I say this every time, I think it's going to be one of my favourites. I think it'll be extremely wearable, which is what I need. So I used Rowan Kidsilk Haze and Felted Tweed. I used these two shades held together, which I bought last year. We have various quantities of Felted Tweed and Kidsilk Haze in mine and my mum's joint stash, and I'd swatched the two held together in two completely different colours, and then tried doing a little drop stitch ladder, and absolutely loved how it looked with having the two different colours and having then obviously each ladder has two strands, and I just thought it looked really effective. So I ordered this yarn last year, I think over a year ago actually, and kind of had the idea in the back of my mind, and I was going to do something with a set-in sleeve, and then that wasn't really quite working, and it's just, sometimes I think it's not necessarily a bad thing to let an idea just kind of stew in the back of your mind for a while. So yeah, I didn't intend for it to take a year until I got around to it, but never mind, it did. And I'm really happy with the finished look of everything. So it is a drop shoulder construction. There she goes, wafting again. Works seamlessly from the top down. So you cast on it across the back of the shoulders, work some short rows to shape the shoulders and the neck, and then the fronts are picked up along the back piece. Try and show here. Maybe I should stand up. So the fronts are picked up along here, some shaping worked, and then the fronts worked separately down to here. Which this neck can be made to whatever depth you like, which I thought would be a nice one to easily modify, because often with a neckline, if it's a V-neck or a round neck, you have different rates of shaping throughout it, and the depth of the neck depends on the depth of the armhole and all these different things to consider. But with this, because it's not actually shaped, like it kind of sits open, but it's it's just like that, it's just a slit. Can easily just be made shorter or longer, not a problem. So I have written the pattern very carefully with kind of saying write down how many rows you work in this section and in this section, and then add this number to this section to give you the total number of rows you need to work in this section. So that if you follow the pattern exactly, you just read knit 10 rows or whatever it may be. But if you choose to modify the armhole depth or the neck depth at all, or your row gauge is different, then there's kind of a little system to follow through to find out how many rows to work. So it takes all the guesswork out of it. Currently being tested, this pattern. And oh yeah, the sleeves, so that's the main detail. These big drop shoulder, very deep armhole sleeves, which I finally have cracked it. I have a bit of a mind blank, some kind of mental block around deep armholes, that every time I cast on a sweater, and I intend to make deep armholes so many times because I love how it looks, and then I'm like, right, that's really deep. As I've made it, that's definitely a really deep armhole. Try it up against an existing sweater. And then every single time I seem to forget that when it comes to actually picking up around the armhole, or whatever it is whatever the construction may be, that everything kind of cinches in a bit and it never looks as deep as I want it to. And I've made this mistake so many times. My mum is always saying to me, Lily, what are you doing? You're jumping the gun there. You're joining it around too soon. You're making that same mistake again. So, which I did make the same mistake again with this one, but luckily I didn't get too far and I caught myself and thought, you know what? No, don't do that again. So I did frog it, did add extra depth to the armhole, and now it is properly loose. Finally. So before adding the sleeves, they look ginormous, the armholes, but that's what gives the look. So I finally learnt from my mistakes. It only took about 10 attempts, but we got there in the end. And yeah, so due to the ridiculously deep armhole, there is more shaping here than I would normally do. I often have quite straight sleeves, but not on this occasion. And then you work some ladders throughout the sleeves where you drop and let it all unravel, and then at the very end you work the remaining ladders and drop and let those unravel. Which this particular yarn combination, you don't get a nice satisfying unravelling as it kind of does it by itself. That just doesn't happen with this yarn. It's far too sticky. You have to get in there with a DPN or something and poke around and unravel them. The stitches don't go anywhere unless you force them to. So yeah, that's my most recent project. It's currently being test knitted. Can't remember if I said that. There are 2 different length options in the pattern. So I made a full length version, which is longer than I would usually make actually. I tend to go for a slightly more cropped look, but I really wanted this to work sort of tucked in, half tucked at the front into high-waisted pants. Because that's a look that I find extremely wearable and useful and practical for the climate I live in, where might look sunny but it's not actually that warm. So I thought this would be a good all year round item, and the colour I think could work equally well as an autumnal kind of shade as it does in spring. So yeah, we've gone for the half tuck kind of length, and also the pattern includes a cropped length in case you did want the more cropped and boxy look. So I'll share a little bit more about the sizing. There's a few changes across the size range for this pattern. Each size is not worked in exactly the same way, but I'll share more about that in another video when the pattern is coming out. So, and once I have tester photos to share, and move on to my next thing to talk about, which is my love number sweater. So I definitely have shared this one before. Let's just scoot Dolly over a little bit. Definitely have shared this one before. I finished it before Christmas. The pattern has now been out a couple of weeks. It's been test knitted, of course, in lots of different colours and shapes and sizes and everything, and I love how they all turned out. So the pattern is available from my blog, Ravelry and Etsy. It uses worsted weight yarn. I used my yarn because of course. So I used Lily Kate Makes Axis, my blend of 90% merino and 10% undyed Surrey alpaca, available in 12 shades. going into QVC mode there. Yeah, I do love my yarn. I'm just going to keep stroking it. It's so nice to wear, and I'm not just saying that, it genuinely is. And quite a few test knitters did use this yarn, and a few in this colour, so that's always nice. We can be twinning. And I think this is actually probably one of my most beginner-friendly patterns, which, don't be put off by the texture. I'm just groping Dolly here. Yeah, because the round yoke construction is actually the simplest sweater construction. People might find it a little bit intimidating, maybe, because it doesn't look as simple as a drop shoulder. But actually, it kind of is even simpler. So you just cast on at the neck, work in the round, work increases through the yoke in the round, just all going in the same direction, and then just set stitches aside for each sleeve and work the body in the round. So there's only a tiny little bit of picking up stitches at the underarm here, and other than that, it is very simple, just all in one go. I probably don't need to explain all this to you. I'm sure most people watching this are very familiar with a round yoke construction, but just in case you're not, please don't be scared of it. Please just go for it, honestly. And this twisty detail is a lot simpler than you might think. It kind of has a lacy look, but it's not lace. It's just 2 rows where you do a little bit of a nifty twist, and it's my favourite kind of technique where it has maximum impact with minimum effort, so that you can spend most of your rows just whizzing around, either knitting or purling, or maybe you're doing a few increases. And then something that you do on 1 or 2 rows just tweaks it all and makes a nice impact, but doesn't actually require slogging through loads of colourwork or fancy lace patterns or anything like that. So I think it makes for a good relaxing knit, but with enough to keep your mind occupied, I would say. Moving on from the Love Number sweater, I actually have accessory patterns that aren't hats to share. So I have said many times on this channel that I'm very much a garment knitter. I do not do shawls, it's just not really my thing. And I do a few hats in winter, and that's about it in terms of accessories. Apart from socks, which I haven't knit as many in the last few years, but throughout my time as a knitter, so over the last 16 years or so, I have knit quite a few socks. So I figured maybe it was time I designed some. So every sock I'd made so far uses a heel, flap and gusset construction, which I think fits really well and looks nice and neat, but I won't lie, I do kind of prefer the look of a short row heel. I think they just look kind of neater and more minimal, but I didn't like the fit of them. So I was like, right, well, I want the fit of one and the look of another. So I know there are lots of different sock heel constructions out there, and someone may have already done this exact construction. I don't know. I looked through a lot of patterns on Ravelry, but I'm not going to claim to have looked through every single sock pattern out there and ruled it out. But I did come up with the idea of my own accord, but whether it's been done before, who knows. These are my Sun Up socks, which you may be able to tell from here have a very, very bulbous, very sticky outy heel, because they have a typical short row heel, work with German short rows, but also additional shaping that means the part over the over your instep, over the top of your foot, that would normally be very strained with a short row heel is not strained, because there are extra stitches in there to accommodate that. And that's what I always thought that a short row heel sock, getting my words tangled here, short row heel needed, because it just always looked like it was really tight around the ankle, like there wasn't quite enough fabric to go around. It just looked a bit strained, and I wasn't keen on that, but the heel itself I liked, so this is my solution, which I came up with by drawing on my own ankles with eyeliner. So I would definitely recommend that. If you're trying to design socks, why give yourself the hassle of trying to guess the right proportions to draw a sock on a piece of paper when you can just draw on your own foot? Seemed logical to me, so that's what I did. And I have now 2 pairs of socks. Funnily enough, this one actually has more stitches than this one, but just goes to show the difference that the pattern makes. So this is my after hours sock pattern, which uses a simple lace pattern down the front to give a nice minimal fishnet kind of look, which I really like. I thought it went with the nice dark yarn nicely, nice high contrast against my skin in this colour. I thought it looked nice in the fishnets. And then shaping is built into the lace pattern so that it all just kind of flows nicely and seamlessly into the heel with a little bit of extra shaping that makes it fit smoothly. So that's the after hours sock, and similar kind of thing with the sun up socks. So we've got a morning and night kind of theme, but this one uses a cable pattern that expands around the heel and then just stocking stitch on the sole of the foot. So whether I will be doing more sock patterns, who knows? They are currently being tested. I did kind of fancy doing a stripe version, but I thought let's just not get too carried away yet. Let's just do 2 socks for now and see how that goes. But I really enjoyed it actually, and it was nice to have a really small project on the go that I could carry around with me. So I hope you like socks. They're a good one for all year round, aren't they? They can always just go in your bag, a pair of socks. Nice to have on the go. I have finished one more project recently, but I don't have it with me to share because it was a little baby sweater that I made for my friend whose first baby is due any day. Well, it was due last week, hasn't arrived yet, so handed it to her yesterday, and now we're just waiting on the baby arriving to fill it, so that's exciting. I'll insert some photos because it was so cute. I loved working on it. It's so satisfying. So I used the Petite Knit Friday Sweater baby pattern. However, I did modify it because when I cast on, I thought I'll go for the size 2 to 4 months, but I was using a cotton acrylic yarn and the recommended yarn is wool. And I think that's probably the reason that mine didn't have as much give. But I started the neck and was thinking, this is tiny. And I actually tried it up against a baby sweater in the supermarket, just thinking, I can't picture how big a baby is. Maybe it's not tiny, maybe it's fine. But it was like the same size as the preemie baby sweaters. So it was probably a combination of my gauge and the yarn. To be honest, I didn't actually measure my gauge because I thought it'll fit the baby at some point. It'll be fine. So I had to rip that back and start again by adding a little modified raglan button closure thing. The type you often see on baby garments anyway. So I just modified it slightly to add that, and hopefully that means it'll be wearable for a longer period of time and won't be grown out of as quickly. Yes, that was a very satisfying little knit. Definitely enjoyed making that. It was nice to follow someone else's pattern for a change every now and then. I just think, I just don't have to think about the numbers. I don't have to write it down as I go. Just knit it and that's it. I'm done with it. I don't have to try and think, I need to remember this. So every now and then it's very nice to do. But now, of course, I've returned to my own projects. Before I show you what's inside, I'm just going to show you this project bag, actually, which I was recently sent from Lazenby & Co. Lazenby Sewing on Instagram. She asked me if I'd like to try one of their knitting bags, which will be, I think you can request a finished bag, but the business is mainly sewing patterns. So the sewing pattern for this bag aimed at sewists who are also knitters and vice versa. So I'll just pull my project out. I'm absolutely loving this bag. I don't actually have very many knitting bags at all. I tend to just use a tote bag, to be honest. I'm a knitter who doesn't collect knitting bags. We do exist. But I must say I'm absolutely loving using this. So I've just folded it down from the duffel bag shape that you can now probably see better. All these little internal compartments, all the pockets that are of different sizes, some for needles, some for yarn, some for notions, and then little loops for stitch markers, all things like that, just really well thought out. And it's a really useful size for smallish project. I mean, I wouldn't fit a whole sweater, I don't think, but a summer top, like I can easily fit all my yarn and projects in this bag. And it's been everywhere with me. I have actually taken it to the supermarket. I don't think you look... I like a knitting bag that doesn't scream, I'm full of crafts, you know, it's just quite slick. So would definitely recommend that. And if my sewing skills were up to it and I had the time and resources to do so, I would definitely be sewing one myself. But in the meantime, very grateful for Lazily Sewing for sending me this. Moving on to the project that was actually inside it. This project I have restarted, I think 4 times now. So I'm working with Cocon yarn and I'm absolutely loving the yarn. The fact that I've had to restart is not at all a reflection on the yarn. It is a reflection on me not being able to get my brain in gear. So they kindly sent me some of the merino linen and a few different shades of the slubby mohair to try. So I swatched a variety of different ideas. I originally thought, oh, maybe I'll use it as stripes. Maybe I'll use the slubby mohair around the edges. I thought it looked really cute with the fluffy yarn around the edges, possibly different colours. I just thought that worked really well. But I didn't want to use the white as the base with coloured on it. I kind of fancied doing it the other way around and using a coloured base with white fluffy mohair. However, it didn't occur to me that if you make anything in a colour with white fluff around the edge, it just looks like a Christmas kind of thing. It looks like fancy dress. So that was that idea sidelined after I'd already started something and then realised, oh, this is not quite looking as I hoped. And then I thought, right, well, this is a merino linen yarn. I think it's 10% linen? Yeah, 10% linen. I thought, right, let's go for something a bit more patterned and drapey than I normally do, because linen doesn't particularly lend itself to structured knits, so let's go with it. Let's go for something a bit more drapey and with a lace pattern, because I'd knit a lot of stocking stitch and I just fancied doing something a bit more patterned. Tried so many different stitch patterns, eventually settled on chevron kind of pattern, which if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen I posted a reel last week sometime with it on my needles. The colours inverted the other way around to this, so it was a blue base with white zigzag. And I was kind of convincing myself that it was going well, but then when I stopped and properly thought about it, I was like, right, what am I actually doing here? Am I kind of getting mixed up between a sort of boho kind of beachy patterned zigzaggy style but also wanting to do something quite structured at the top, and there's just too many different conflicting ideas, and I was just knitting aimlessly without actually having a proper plan. And sometimes that works out brilliantly, but I was just had it in the back of my mind that this was not quite going in the right direction, so decided to call it quits a few inches in. Finally learnt that lesson to not just keep persevering for the sake of it and know when to stop. And now I have a very different idea that makes the most of the fluffy yarn, as in another of these kind of big impact with little effort. So I'm not going to share too much of this yet because there is not a lot to see other than this panel. But it will hopefully all come together nicely. I have a very clear idea this time. I know where I'm going with it, and it's been an enjoyable knit so far, and I feel much better about it. Even when I decided on this idea the first time I cast on, then I decided that the gauge wasn't quite right and it was a bit bigger than I was expecting, so I had to rip back again. So yeah, I think we're on attempt number 4 now, but this is the furthest I've got. So fingers crossed that by next week I'll have a finished top to share. We'll see. Let's hope. My battery's flashing at me, so I will wrap this up pretty quickly now. Just one more project and a little bit more yarn to share. Another blue and white one. This is kind of my theme at the moment. My mum has actually done the majority of the knitting on this, whilst I'm working on another one. Just a little hint at a new top that's coming, another little summer top. Using Quing Merino singles that I bought at, what's it called, Unravel Festival in early 2020, just before the world shut down. These 2 shades, going for a tie-dye kind of look. But again, quite a minimal style, so there is very little to share there. I will hopefully have another little top by next time. And the final item I'd like to share is yarn rather than a pattern. And I've mentioned on this channel before that I receive a Knit Crate subscription in exchange for sharing content about their products, just using them, doing what I want with really, which is very nice. And usually you get 2 100-gram skeins in this subscription. However, this time a nice surprise was 4 50-gram skeins instead. So this is a superwash merino worsted weight. I haven't investigated too much, to be honest. There's one ball band across the 4, which I thought was quite cool. Knitology Worsted by Knit Crate in 4 shades of pink. And I know that 4 50-gram hanks will make a top in my size because I have done it myself. So I'm thinking this will be good to make something like a little summery or springy vest that can be worn over a shirt or worn on its own. And it's very nice and squishy. And sometimes I just think it's kind of nice to have ideas. Like, I probably wouldn't have gone and picked out these 4 skeins, but because someone else has done the choosing, then I'm like, oh, you know what, actually that's given me some quite good ideas. When I'm not starting with a blank slate, it's kind of nice to have that little spark of inspiration from someone else choosing colours for you. So yeah, I think that's one of the perks of a knitting subscription kind of setup. And if you use the code LilyKateMakes, you can get discount off your first order. I think it's 20%. I'll have to just double check, but I'll put all the information below. With Knit Crate, if you want to receive a little yarny package every month, this being this month's, I'll just keep squishing it now because it's so soft. And yeah, that's what I'm maybe casting on with soon. I do have a lot of projects that I want to knit in the next few months. A knit along I'm going to be running for my crop top. Shall mention that in a video next week because that battery icon's just hovering at me there. Lots to get excited about. I love spring and summer knitting. I know a lot of people associate knitting with winter and autumn and all cosy, warm things, but I actually probably prefer lightweight spring projects. I think you can have so much more fun with them when you're not trying to bundle up. Let me know which you prefer actually, spring, summer projects or autumn, winter. I think most people would probably say autumn, winter, but I'm definitely camp spring, summer myself, and have so much to be excited about for the next few months in terms of knitting at least anyway. So thank you so much for watching. I will hopefully not disappear for quite so long next time. Gonna go catch up on some other YouTube videos now, edit this video. I've got patterns to write up, knitting to do. I think I'm just gonna might have a couple of hours of actually getting some knitting done whilst watching a few YouTube videos. So do leave me a comment with some recommendations of your favourite knitting YouTube channels, please. And yeah, thank you for watching.